Here they come. 5, maybe?
No, I'd say 7.
What do you think you're doing here? This is a restricted area.
Stop right there!
Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game SO. Taking a continuing retrospective on the Time Crisis franchise, what I'm calling Crisis Center. And obviously, if you've already done Time Crisis and Time Crisis 2, we've got nowhere else to stop but Time Crisis 3. And this game, just like the first two, share absolutely no continuity as far as the characters or story are concerned, except for the fact that our friend Wild Dog is back. He is the continuity in this franchise. And this is the entry in which Bandai Namco basically changes absolutely everything up, giving us new mechanics, new weapons, and a completely different way to play the game, even if it is the same fun. Before we get too far involved, though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But the first thing you should probably notice at the bottom center of the screen is we have 4 different weapons we can choose from anytime, so long as we have ammunition. We've got a handgun, a machine gun, a shotgun, as well as a rocket launcher. And when you're in cover, if you pull the trigger, you can switch through those weapons at whim. And keeping your weapons for certain instances is going to be the name of the game of Time Crisis 3. If you go into a handgun battle and you need a machine gun, you're going to have a very bad time. But this was a smart design decision from the developers at Namco, because by this point in time everyone understood what the Time Crisis formula was, so they needed to really expand upon the game in some way while keeping all the fun intact. And the best part is Time Crisis 3 is every bit as fun as the original 2 entries. It has gigantic spectacle, amazing shooting mechanics, and a lot of weird story. And if you haven't noticed already, some of the opponents also have a life bar. A single shot is going to kill most enemies, but some opponents are going to have to take almost an entire clip out of your handgun, or like 10 bullets out of the machine gun before they're able to be put down. And that is nice as well. It gives you a little bit longer of a look at what you're shooting at, and it gives you a little bit more challenge. And if Time Crisis 2 had some big set pieces, Time Crisis 3 goes even harder on that. They've taken all of the action, all of the intensity, and really tried to make this game as big as possible. Now, I am playing the PlayStation 2 version here with my gun for IR, and I am enhancing the graphics in PCSX 2, but you can totally play this game on an original PlayStation as well, and just use a CRT television for it. And of course, the first boss is just sitting here hovering in a helicopter. He is going to shoot missiles, and magically our people are going to be able to jump directly into the Jeep, landing perfectly in the seat in something that could only be described as something like an Expendables movie come to life. And this first boss battle against this helicopter shooting here with chain guns is like a 3 to 4 minute battle depending on how well you play. And that's what I really love about Time Crisis 3. It is just action-packed from start to finish. Boss battles last a long time, there's multiple stages, multiple things you need to do. It really does feel like an expansion on the overall formula, because by the 3rd game in a series, if you don't expand on things, it can end up feeling stale. But as I played through all 4 of the original Time Crisis games so far for this retrospective, I've had fun with each and every single one of them, because every game does something slightly different and new, so it really does feel unique. And of course, our boss here has a massive chain gun, and we need to take him out before he takes us out. And as we do this, we're always driving down this boardwalk in what seems to be Greece, but it is a fictional country in the narrative of the story. And this is just, again, so much fun. This is what I love about arcade games, and light gun games in particular. These gigantic set pieces that just bring you on a ride, literally in this instance, showing you so much stuff at once. And as we move on to the second area here, you're going to see, if this is not Greece, or at least Cyprus, I don't know what it is. This game wears this location inspiration on its sleeve. And you'll see there, as we shoot some enemies, we get to restock our weapons as well. And compared to the first 2 entries, this has so much destructibility in the environments. They had more power for the arcade board, and for the PlayStation 2, they'd gotten better at developing it. So you see all of these props in the screen are just going to completely blow away. And speaking of blow you away, there's a soundtrack, and I love it. Listen, I'll be right back.
Machine gun. Grenade.
Awesome music, awesome sound effects, and it really does get closer to Time Crisis 1 in the overall cheerier vibe of the music, feeling like something ripped out of a B-list James Bond movie. And I feel like Time Crisis 2, the music was a little bit too subdued, and that is the fun thing about Time Crisis 3. If I was going to rank the games, I would put this one above Time Crisis 2 just because it's bigger, more action-packed, it's got a better soundtrack, it's got some extra weapons, and when I play this one, I always find myself enjoying it. And that's not to say Time Crisis 2 isn't absolutely awesome as well. This one's just a personal favorite of mine. And like I said in the Time Crisis 2 video, you're definitely going to have another train ride. I love going through this forest here on this canyon, fighting all these guys that pop out of the train. And honestly, from a cover perspective, trains are one of the best places for light gun games to go because there always is cover to be had. And we get stuck on this bridge right here, and you know full well, spoiler alert, it is going to blow up, and we're going to have to climb up the train, Nathan Drake style in Uncharted. But Time Crisis 3 is a very fun pivot on a very familiar formula. By this point in the franchise's history, you'd already played 2 games, maybe more if you played the pivot on PlayStation 1, and that's just some of those things. You have to always be improving on what you did last, amping up the difficulty, amping up the spectacle, and changing up the gameplay, and it's stuff like this, shooting off a hanging train about ready to fall into the ravine while all of the enemies' bodies fall to their deaths behind you. It really does feel, again, something like an action movie come to life, and that's what this franchise has done better than I think any other light gun franchise around. It really feels like you're interacting with some of your favorite action movies of all time. And as a side note, if you've never played the new Rambo game from Sega, you have to check that out as well. It's a light gun game, and it does another awesome job on those set piece fronts, but that's definitely not Time Crisis related. And I love that this guard and light tower here is going to fall into the screen as well, blowing up and just basically mangling everything in front of it. There's so many explosions in this game, there's so much stuff to shoot at, there's so many mini boss encounters here like these tanks that aren't going to be boss propers but are going to give you one hard time. You can't help but love what this game does. And just like the original game and the second, it also has a 2-player mechanic in 2 different spots, and it also has some side story missions as well where you're playing the game from another person's perspective. But of course, here is our friend Wild Dog. He is back, impervious to explosions, cannot die, and of course he's going to explode in this game as well. But he has brought a friend this time. Wild Dog was not content to just be alone. He now has his best friend here, Wild Fang, so it's kind of hilarious that they basically replicated themselves in some way or another. And as far as Wild Dog fights are concerned, I love this one the best. It is so long, it's so challenging, there's so many different layers to it. You're constantly seeing and doing something new. All of the fangs are popping out somewhere trying to get you, and it just works, especially with 2 players and you can focus on different areas of the screen at once, or if you end up going dual wield. And I love that dude can just basically roundhouse kick metal boxes straight into your face. He's definitely not been skipping leg day in any way, shape, or form as far as this is concerned. And as we navigate around all of these different shipping containers, it really does feel almost like a duel in an action movie. You're constantly in their face, you gotta get some pot shots in, you gotta get their life bar down before they hit you, and of course it culminates into another circular battle just like the original fight against Wild Dog in Time Crisis 1, so it definitely calls back to itself more than once, and it's self-referential in the overall storyline. And you'll see here as we're about to kill Wild Dog, he is just in your face one more time, and he's changed out his chain gun hand for a flamethrower hand. He constantly keeps getting new hands. And as we move to the cutscene here and walk up on top of him, you're going to see something very familiar happen again. And I love that they just keep doing this over and over. The same plunger, Wild Dog explodes, but trust me, you'll be seeing him again. I'm going to give you one more taste of the soundtrack because I like this area in particular. I'll come back and show you guys the ending of Time Crisis 3 and tell you where we're going from here. But enjoy the music because, again, it is top notch. The music is just so perfectly fitting there. It is action movie intensity start to finish, and you have so many enemies to shoot that music really drives the overall experience forward. Now, if there is one complaint I could make about Time Crisis 3, I would say it doesn't have a very intriguing final boss battle. This dude's going to run back and forth shooting at you with that gigantic sword in his hand, but honestly it doesn't have the same intensity as the boss battle from Time Crisis 1 or even Time Crisis 2, so I kind of wish they had done a little bit more here. Sure, you get some Tesla cannons on some tanks, and those are the biggest thing here, but they really don't take many shots to hit, and they're honestly very easy to avoid. So I just wish if there was one thing I could change about Time Crisis 3 is that the boss battle was actually a little bit more of a spectacle and a little bit more challenging. As you'll see here, he's just going to keep jumping around. He has different rocket launchers, but never really does anything too hyper exciting. I'm not saying it's a boss battle that isn't worth playing, it definitely is. It just is probably the weakest boss battle of the entirety of the Time Crisis franchise in a game that otherwise is one of the most intense they've ever made. And of course, as we move into the cutscene here, he is going to tell us it's too late, there's no way to stop the missiles now because they are launching, and like in any Time Crisis game, nothing's ever too late, because about 10 seconds later we absolutely just find a way to stop the missiles from launching, and this entire area is going to blow up with what looks like 5 intercontinental ballistic missiles falling to the earth, and yet somehow our friends are again going to be 100% safe, proving that both Wild Dog as well as the player characters are invincible in the universe of Time Crisis, and nobody really dies except the enemies that you see in front of you. But that's Time Crisis 3. It's a bigger, better version of Time Crisis 2, outside of the boss battle in the end being slightly not as exciting. And of course, we're going to ride off into the sunset like every other Time Crisis game. But leave me a comment down below and tell me if you've ever played Time Crisis 3 and if you've seen an arcade cabinet. Because for some strange reason, I always see Time Crisis and Time Crisis 2 on arcade floors, and I never see Time Crisis 3 anymore. Maybe it broke too easily, I'm really not sure, but it is just a game I don't see that often. Short of that, we'll be back next week with Time Crisis 4, but I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.